So welcome to the Love Connection with Human Design. So this is about how we connect, obviously, to another person. Hi, Maxine. And this will be about mostly about where on a relationship level, but this can pertain to friends. It can pertain to your coworkers, but mostly, obviously, I'm going to be focusing on relationships and love. If you are not familiar with human design, some of this may be a little confusing if you have no idea what human design is, but I'm going to do my best to make sure that I at least give you parts so you understand what's being seen. Okay, so let's just dive right in. So this is my introductory slide. If you guys been to my events before, you know this is my spiel about what is human design. And this is your energetic blueprint. And this is like, as your DNA is your biological blueprint, wow, expect that your human design is your energetic blueprint. It does have to do with your DNA. Supposedly there's connection to DNA and human design, but it's really here to help you kind of self-discover who you are, your personality type, help guide you on decisions, how to lead a more fulfilling life, you know, what your purpose might be, what your spiritual gifts are, health and life cycles, and then of course to help you understand your relationships and children and pets as well, because there is mammalian design as well. You can get a free chart at geneticmatrix.com. There's another website called jovianarchive.com, but I prefer Genetic Matrix myself. And keep that in mind, you do have to have your birthplace, birth time, and birth date. If you do not have your birth time, you can usually find it on your birth certificate, even though I do know there's a lot of states that haven't done it until later on. So, you know, always ask your parents. But if the hospital is still around that you were born, they should have a record of it as well. If you do not have your birth time, you can still get some information for your chart, basically your type, as long as the date doesn't change a lot. And there are people that recertification astrologers that will help you figure out your birth time based on the life events that you've had. And you can also use a pendulum if you trust that. So now, one thing I want to mention too is, as I've mentioned, this is to how you connect with other people. It's one-on-one. This is a connection between two people. Once you get into a connection with 3 to more people, it actually forms a different type of energy called a penta, which I'm not going to be discussing in this. But so this is really only one-on-one. Once another person comes in, it does change the energy dynamics. But what influences our connection? So in human design, there's certain areas, and it's never easy, unfortunately, but there's your type, which I'll be going over. And this has to do more about your authority and your strategy when entering into the relationship is the most important thing. I'm going to be discussing authorities at the very end, but I will be discussing strategy in the beginning. Your definition and channels, profile and node lines, and then centers. And the centers are going to play a big role. And if you find yourself in this pattern of unhealthy relationships or toxic relationships or not seeming to connect with the right person or holding on to a relationship longer or having a hard time letting go, that's going to play a big role into it, as will the definition. So when we're talking about this is a connection chart. So this is a connection chart between 2 people, which I chose Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, because I figured, you know, everybody pretty much knows who they are, right? So these are called, this is a foundation chart. So if you were to get your own chart, you would just get this information here, and you would get, you know, your planets and your design and your personality side. So each foundation is connected together and it creates a new energy, and this forms this connection chart. There are certain things that obviously are important in a connection chart, which is, and I'll discuss each of these individually, but the connection theme, definition, because you have an individual definition, but when you come together, the definition will be different. And then these connection channels are also important, which is the compromise channels, dominance channels, companionship channels, and electromagnetic channels. So you, as I'll go into these individually, you'll see how all these kind of play in a role, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what a chart looks like first. So connection by type. So the first thing you'll find out when you get your chart is, what is my type? And your type is going to determine how you should enter into the relationship. I do put on here what they pair best with, but I'm going to signify that it's not necessarily important of what the other type is, but there are some that are better with others, but it's not the overall factor in it. So it's really about, your type has to do with how you enter into relationships. So when you meet somebody, okay, I like this person, now what do I do? Well, as a manifester, you are kind of to inform the other that you're interested. So whether you're male, female, it doesn't matter. You are the one that's supposed to tell the person that you like them. You're the one that has to make the move. In society standards, that can be difficult for some people when they're like, oh, but I don't want to be the one to make the first move. You are the one that has to make the first move. Sorry. And as a manifester, so your aura plays a role in this. So manifestors, auras are called closed and repelling. And that means that manifestors can have a difficult time in relationships because the other person can feel like they're not super connected to the person. And it's not supposed to be meant to be a negative thing. Like a closed and repelling aura means that because manifestors are so strong and there's such a strong energy and they're here to really influence another person, they are not supposed to be influenced themselves. And so, Sophia, will you let people into while I'm discussing this too? Or Nicole, whoever. And so with that being said, sometimes manifestors have a difficult time in relationships. And it doesn't mean that you're not meant to be in a relationship, because you are. Everybody's supposed to connect with somebody. It's just that there's other roles that are going to be kind of played into it. But one thing with the manifestor is that they can have a lot of challenges in a relationship, because manifestors tend to, first of all, they don't like being told what to do. Never tell a manifestor what to do. But also, they sometimes just assume that people know what they're going to do. But as your strategy is to inform. So even in the relationship, you are meant to inform the other person when you want to do something, how you're feeling, how, if you want to discuss something, you're the one that's supposed to initiate it. And as a partner, if you're dating a manifestor, it's also important for you to inform them as well. Like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Is this something you want to discuss? A manifestor, it will be up to them to decide and take the initiative after that, because they're the one that's supposed to initiate. But as long as there's a mutual respect between manifestor and the other partner, the relationship can do really well. Now, manifestors do pair best with other manifestors because of their energy being so dynamically different than everybody else's energy. But they're only 9% of the population. So the likeliness of a manifestor finding another manifestor is going to be a little bit more rare. So projectors, which is what I'll discuss here in a minute, but projectors are really here to guide energy beings. And since manifestors are energy beings and projectors are non-energy beings, sometimes they also do well. It just really depends. It does not matter though, unless the manifestor enters the relationship correctly, which is meaning that they're the ones to inform, they're the ones to initiate it. Depending on their authority as well, that's going to make another play into that, but we'll discuss that at the end. So generators and manifesting generators. Now, manifesting generators are generators no matter what. I just like to keep it a little separate because they have a little bit of a different strategy. So as a generator, this is to respond to the other interested person. And what I mean that is that you're not supposed to, if you like somebody, like you're supposed to basically wait for that person to kind of give you a sign like, hey, you can come and talk to me now. And so it's really about, and this can be like, let's say you're on an app, right? It doesn't mean that you have to wait for the person to like you first or whatever. It's still responding, is still swiping left or right because you're still responding to something. It's just that you're responding to it. And then that person, when they ask you, hey, you should wait for them to ask you first, like, hey, do you want to meet up? Do you want to go out? Because that way you'll know, depending on your authority, and whether it's right or not for you. So as a manifesting generator, though, you have a little bit of an extra step where you're supposed to respond and then inform them like, hey, yeah, I'll go out with you because I like you kind of thing, or like, yeah, because I'm interested. Now, generators tend to pair best with other manifesting or generators because, or again, projectors, because projectors are here to guide. It does say a little bit that a non-sacral being, which generators, the reason why they're generators is because of this sacral energy here, that sometimes there can be a dynamic difference between when you're a sacral energy and a non-sacral energy. There can be kind of this overwhelming energy that comes in because generators are the most energetic out of all types. And you have this kind of boundless energy that sometimes as other people will come in, they'll feel that energy, they're going to take it on, they're going to take it on times two. And it can be very overwhelming for some people. And it can cause them to kind of burn themselves out when they don't know how to take it. It's really important, though, if you are a generator or a manifesting generator, entering the relationship is going to be so important for you. It's the most important for all generators because generators are here to be awoken. All generators go through shadow sides and conditioning, which is something I'll discuss a little bit more later. And part of that is they all have this kind of awakening in their life because that's what they're supposed to do. They're here to do things. They're here to change things. And part of that has to come through that sacral energy. But if you enter into a relationship incorrectly, or if you stay on with the relationship longer than you're supposed to, this can carry a huge wound for a generator. It will break them. It will cause a lot of pain for them because generators have this open and enveloping aura. Their aura is biggest as a way of like, hey, come into my world, because they're here to respond. So they're trying to pull people in, and that's going to affect that energy of yours too. So it will carry within your aura when you have this wound, and it can take a long time for that wound to heal. So the secret to like any relationship success for a generator is to make sure that they enter it correctly and they build it through this response, through whatever their authority is, be it be a sacral or emotional. Now, projectors are a non-energy being, and they are here to guide the other. That is what they're here for. They have to be recognized or invited. Now, again, this doesn't have to be a literal invite, like, hey, you want to come out with me, but it can be kind of like a body language invite, right? Like if someone's across the room and you're like, maybe they didn't invite you to come over, but you see them looking at you from a corner, you're like, oh yeah, that dude's totally interested in me, or that person's totally interested in me. So you feel that invite, like they're inviting you into their aura, basically. So you can go there and you respond to that, or they'll recognize you. They'll say, hey, like I saw you, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. That's the strategy. So once they get that, depending on their authority, which again, I'll discuss at the end here, that's how, if it feels right, then that's entering into the relationship correctly. So again, they're not supposed to be the initiators, they're supposed to wait. And sometimes for a projector, it could be difficult because, you know, they get kind of desperate sometimes for this recognition, especially if there's a lot of conditioning that's been involved in a projector, meaning like if they had a lot of neglect as a child or abusive family like environment growing up, or the people that are surrounding themselves are not good for them. It's going to really condition to this projector that they're going to be desperate for these kind of invitations or this recognition, and they'll just end up like dating whoever can come across, and that can cause this kind of bad, unhealthy relationships, or these toxic relationships, because they become this like dependent, then they will become dependent on the persons for validation. And it causes this pattern and conditioning that can result in a lot of bitterness, especially within the relationship. Now, as a reflector, probably very rare for anybody to even be a reflector in this group, but if you are, it's about 1% of the population. So as a reflector, reflectors are completely open. So when it comes to you, you have to wait 28 days for your moon cycle to go through. That's your strategy, is waiting for the lunar cycle to go through. But you have a more, you're the most sensitive in a relationship, because you're going to reflect what that other person is. And so that person, you will be worried, like, is that person really falling in love with me, or are they falling in love with themselves? Because you're going to reflect back on what that person is. So it's really important for a reflector to make sure that they're in the right environment as well, because their environment will influence how they are and how they respond to people. But for a relationship, for a reflector, the most beneficial is if it's very productive and fertile, like if they're a mom, or if they're surrounded by children or animals, because it's really that reflectors have this deep desire to be around this innocence, and so that will help benefit them. You know what, actually, Sophia, I'm going to open up chat just as I'm talking here. That way, if people do have questions, we'll address them at the end, but I just ask you guys to keep chat to a minimum so that it doesn't get distracting or anything. Now, connection by definition. This is important because your definition has to do with your circuitry. It has to do with your channels and your gates, right? So you can see here, I kind of did little fun examples of what this means. So if somebody has a single definition, it's because all the energy flows through one way. There's no breaks in their chart. And your circuitry and your definition has to do with how you interact with other people too. So it's a big deal when it comes to connection, when it comes to how you interact with society altogether. So like I said, single definition means that you have this flow of energy, there's no breaks, and you'll see it in your chart where it doesn't have to exactly be these centers, but no matter what, you're going to see that all the centers are connected together. There's no breaks. So this is 41% of the population, and somebody that's singly defined doesn't need another person technically. It doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be in a relationship. Again, everybody's meant to connect, but it's meaning like you don't need another person to feel whole. Singly defined people are going to have this sense of like independence to them, and this sense of wholeness where they're not going to feel like something's kind of missing or they're searching for this thing. So this is why, like, they say they don't need another person. And this is where their centers are going to be most conditioned. And what I mean by that is when you come into a relationship, wherever in your chart, wherever you're colored, this is the energy you give to your partner. Wherever you are white in the chart is the energy you're going to get from a partner. Now, So for singly defined people, those white areas are going to be the most susceptible to being conditioned by the other person. They're going to be most influenced by the other person. Also, wherever they're defined, they have those defined areas could be definitely conditioned in childhood. So it's something that if they're carrying wounds from childhood and those centers haven't been cleared out, then they're going to carry that on the most through anybody else. Now, as a split, this is 46% of the population. Splits are going to be the hardest to break from a relationship because splits means that your energy is literally split. So you can see this is actually an example of my chart. I'm very head oriented and like root energy, but I don't have anything that flows directly through. And this would be considered a large split because I would need a full channel to get myself to feel whole. So I literally need somebody else to make me feel whole. And whether that be, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be that I have to be in a relationship, because obviously I'm not right now and I can be just fine with that. But, you know, there's planets that will make a difference. Some days you're going to feel whole. There's going to be, you know, if you have pets, sometimes pets can make you feel whole depending on their energy. And also, you know, if you work in a public environment, or even when you go into a coffee shop and you have a split, any of these splits that we're talking about, like always going into a public atmosphere will help you feel that kind of energy, make you feel whole. And this is really because the splits are really here to help teach people how to be in monogamous relationships. Because they're always consciously looking for what it is that they're missing. So when you're a small split, it's because, and I'm going to explain this when I get into, I'll show you this with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, because they're both splits, they're both small splits, but when they come together, they're singly defined, because you're always going to be looking for what that other person has. When you have this, it's called the hanging gates. I don't have the gates shown in this picture, but if there's a gate that's missing the other connection, actually, I'll just do this. It'll make more sense. So you see, like these guys, they're split. They're a small split. This means that one of them is missing a gate. Like Meghan has gate 1, Prince Harry has gate 8. And so if they were to connect those two together, it would make them whole. And they do. That's one of their electromagnetic channels. So when they're split together, this means that they fit together. Of course, it again only makes a difference so if they enter the relationship correctly. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, also, if you have a small split where you're just missing a gate, it's going to kind of feel like you're not going to know what's missing in your life, but you're going to always feel like something's missing. You may not like know exactly what it is, but these are going to be those points where those hanging gates are. And usually on the genetic matrix chart, it will show you if you're a small split, what gates you need to feel whole. Those are the gates that you're going to chase after. Those are the gates you're going to find. And people have those, you're going to immediately feel connected to this person. If you have a large split where you need a full channel, you're going to feel, you might even feel a little bit broken in life. I mean, they maybe feel like something's off with your energy, or you have a vague sense of like something's missing, you don't know. And so you're constantly really, you might be really driven to like some self-help or guidance from other people, because you're always feeling like, I don't know why I'm just like split. And like, this is something I definitely relate to, because like I said, like my head and my gut is always fighting each other. So it always feels like I need like an extra guidance to get me there. Now, if you're a triple split, which is only 11% of the population, this is because you're going to be more defined, but all your centers are going to be not connected. Again, you can see how this works here, right? So with triple splits, this is going to be where, again, those centers are going to be the most impactful. And with triple splits, it's really going to be hard for them to be in a suffocating relationship. Their energy is kind of all over the place. They have a lot of like kind of this ADD energy where it's like kind of hard to wrangle in. And they're really meant to have adventures and explore and really go out in these like public spaces. But at times they're going to feel super overwhelmed by people too, because they're so sensitive to these centers that depending on what the people that they surround themselves with, it's really going to make an impact. But there might be certain people they meet that are really going to give them this huge sense of security or centeredness or wholeness, where they actually like can kind of become addicted to the person because they're giving them a specific energy. And then that can distort their decision making and kind of influence their authority when they're not really listening to it, because they're going to be more taking in what the other person has versus what they're supposed to be doing. Now, a quad split is less than 1% of the population. And this is where those hanging gates are going to be super, super sensitive to them, because this means they mostly have every center defined except one. So these people are super stubborn. They're going to be super fixed in their energy, but that one center is going to really be impactful if somebody else has that energy. But these people tend to be in polyamorous relationships or open relationships. They have a hard time kind of committing because they can shift. They kind of have chameleon energy. They kind of act differently around different people. People, they say like, oh, you never really know what that person's going to do or really know what that person's going to be. But like I said, it's less than 1% of the population. So I think it's like 0.9 to be exact. So the likeliness of you coming into that is going to be, pretty rare. So now, when it comes to definition, like I mentioned, so since these guys are both splits, right? And they have this energy that makes them feel whole. The best way I can describe this is like when you meet somebody and you're a split and that person makes you feel whole, it is going to be so hard to break from that person. You're going to think this person is your soulmate. You're going to think this person is maybe even your twin flame, depending on what the gate is, especially if it's a love gate. It's something that is so hard because you literally, to break from them, is going to feel like you're going to lose a part of yourself, because literally you will. Because when you come in, it's like, it gives you this sense of security and a sense of like, almost like confidence in a way that you feel like, yeah, this person really, I mean, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be. This definitely, and you'll make a lot of sacrifices. So it's really, really important, like I said, to enter into the relationship correctly. Did you follow your strategy? And then, as I'm going to mention this as well, I should probably say this now. It does not matter if you have the most perfect connection chart in the world. It matters on the individual. Because if the person is in a shadowed state or conditioned, or they haven't worked out all their traumas and, you know, however you want to word it, it's not going to make a difference how well your connection chart is, because that person is not bringing in the right energy. So like a good example of this is like my ex and I, we have like one of the best connection charts ever. Like I was like, afterwards, I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. But he's got a lot of conditioning to do. He's got a lot, he's in a not self stage where his energy is opposite of how it's supposed to be working. And because of that, it caused so much turmoil in the relationship and it just never felt like the real connection. The connection wasn't able to connect because the energies didn't match. They weren't meant to be, because until he could get himself figured out, it wasn't going to make a difference what I did. And I couldn't force him to change, because it's up to the individual, unfortunately, if they're in a not self, to figure it out themselves, because there's nothing you can do to change a person unless they're willing to change themselves. So just to keep that in mind. But like I said, if you have a split and you come into this single, now, if you're a singly defined person and you come into another person too, and it's singly, that's where these connection channels are going to kind of play a role into how you're feeling towards the person. So that's what we're going to discuss next, is these channels here. I will stop for a second and see, does anybody have any questions, Sophia, that I should be concerned about? I know I said I would wait till the end, but I'm like, I realize a lot of this stuff is really overwhelming. So
No, not yet. Emily says this is so interesting. She's a reflector, 1/3, and find yourself drawn to grounding, nurturing, wholesome types of people. And then Wendy says, I'm a manifestor in a relationship with a reflector. He doesn't have a definition. How is that different from other definitions, from the other definition?
Oh, so like definite, that's right, because I didn't talk about that for a definition, because they technically have no definition. They have none. So they're going to be defined by you. Like, so Wendy, whatever your definition is will honestly impact them. But actually it depends. I would have to see, I take that back, because it depends on what gates they have that will make them feel a certain way. If they have certain gates that, since I can't remember now if you're a split, I think you're a split, Wendy, but if that's the case, then it really comes down to what their gates are. But a reflector, no matter what, is going to be really influenced by, especially as a manifestor, they're going to be super influenced by you. So as long as that person is aware of their energy and how they absorb other people and their environments are correct for them, then the relationship can be great. It isn't, like I said, the types and the definition do play a big role into it, but it really comes down to the individual person, because a reflector can be really secure in themselves, or they're going to be a complete mess. Like there's no, and I know that someone just said they were a reflector in here, which I think that's amazing, because like I said, it's really rare to come across a reflector. So as a reflector yourself, like it can be difficult growing up and not knowing how your energy is when you're reflecting every single person and not knowing who you really are. It's really understanding how the energy works and how it plays into that. Sana, I see you have your hand up, but if you could put your question in the chat, it'll be easier, because I can't, can you ask her to unmute then, I guess, because I don't have access to that right now. So you can go ahead, Sana.
Let me get her.
Okay. My question is, can your type change over time. Like I had trauma and was typed a different type or
No, your type
I
does
don't know.
not.
I don't know what it means. Okay.
No, no.
Also, I just wanted to say, is this available in video? And you are just dynamic, honestly, dynamic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm recording this, so it will be up on video. I'll have it on my website and stuff as well. And if I think, Son, I think you actually subscribed to my site, so I might have your email. So I'll probably send out an email when the video is available as well. Okay.
Thank you, Sana. So we've got 2 more questions in the chat. Do you want them now or you want to wait?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
So Miss Butterfly says, if a generator is not an initiator, how do they enter a relationship with another generator or projector?
It's a great question. So it really comes down to this. It's kind of fun to see this, how this works, right? So you're gonna have to have the other person, whoever asks first, right? It's gonna have to ask the other person, because you're not gonna really know the person's right for you until you respond to it. Now, remember, it doesn't have to be a literal question. So it doesn't have to be like this person saying, hey, do you want to go out with me at first? It can be just like this energy of like, okay, I saw this person across the room, my sacral is lighting up. This is me responding now. So that's kind of how it works. But then once you meet that person, when you get together with them, that's when you're going to want to play with that kind of energy. And then that's when you ask them like, hey, do you want to do something? And then you wait for that other person to ask you too. And then you'll feel how it feels when those kind of response questions comes in. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a great question to ask, especially when it comes to projectors, because they're both like, well, I'm supposed to be waiting for the invitation and what is it? So it really does come down to this. Your auras will definitely like connect in a way where it will draw each other in, and you're going to feel that through your body. So you really have to learn how your body works and how the energy feels, especially depending on, and that also depends too if you're emotional or a sacral being, if you're a generator, which I am going to discuss authorities at the end. So you'll have more clarity on that. I hope that makes sense.
Awesome. And then Seth asks, how do you know if there's a split? I have the top 3 filled and the solar plexus.
So if you have this here and then this here is what I'm guessing you mean. If there's a channel that goes, if you have this 3 in the solar, that means you probably are a manifestor, emotional manifestor is what I would guess. And if there's a channel, if it goes all the way through where this would connect all the way up, there's a line somewhere there, but you should see it on your chart. It should tell you on the chart. So if it's a genetic matrix chart, it's going to tell you on the side of the chart. And if it's a Jovian archive, there should be like keynotes on the chart that will tell you what your definition is. But it's just seeing if there's a line, there's got to be a connection all the way through to make it sure that it's singly defined. Is there any more questions?
Awesome. And then one more question just came in. JR says, I understand I am a generator and I feel like I'm always waiting for the other to act or invite so that I can respond. It can be difficult to navigate. Oh, it's a comment.
Yeah, and it can be.
Lynn,
you don't have to wait. So say as a generator, there's a difference between an invitation and a response. So like I said, for a generator, it does help to be asked the question, but a generator is more about like responding to a sign, seeing something, and then how your body feels into it. When it comes to a projector, it is literally supposed to be an invitation. Like, so don't get hung up on like the actual question that somebody's asking. You will know, because it's not, you're going to feel it depending on your authority too. So it kind of depends on your authority. But if you have like, which again, I'll discuss at the end there. Maybe I should have done that earlier, but we'll wait to the end. Sorry, guys.
And then Lynn, real quick, popped in. Do twin flames complete the other half of the channel?
So this is what I'm going to say about twin flames. Me personally, how I feel about twin flames, I don't know if I necessarily believe in it. Now, and I say that because even as identical twins, and this is because of my human design and I guess my study in genetics, like even identical twins, when the concept between a twin flame is that you're literally split, your soul split with somebody else, from what I understand. And that would make you guys almost like this identical person in a way that you're feeling your other half. It is impossible to have something identical with another person on a scientific level and in human design, because no matter, even identical twins are not identical due to nature and nurture. Because when you are brought up a certain way in your nature, that's going to cause these things called SNPs in your DNA. And those SNPs are these that has to do more with what can I think of the name right now? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Not Your SNPs have to do with epigenetics. There, this word, whew, epigenetics. So your epigenetics will change based off of your nature. So even if twin flames like do exist, because I know that angels, like archangels, supposedly have twin flames, and so I'm totally okay with that. I just think that there's a danger when you're putting in the concept of a twin flame, because you're going to hold on to that person if you think that's your twin flame, even though they may not be in correct energy alignment, or if they, you know, I've just seen a lot of people tend to sacrifice a lot of themselves because they feel like this person's their twin flame. That's how it's supposed to be. But I'm saying that this is what I'm going to discuss in a minute, of how this electromagnetic channel can make people feel like that is absolutely a twin flame. And so if it does exist, I'm not saying that it does or it doesn't, I'm just saying that's my personal views on it. But I think this, like, allowing someone to say this is your other half, technically in human design or even in genetics, we tend to look for something different. We do not look for likeness. It's always going to be like we attract what we oppositely want. And you're going to see this more as I get into these channels and stuff. What you don't have is what you're going to be looking for. So if the concept of a twin flame was correct, then that would be kind of like going against of what our genetic nature is. But again, I'm not sure. So I'm not going to, like, there's no discussion of twin flames don't exist in human design. They just say that's not possible because everybody's different depending on the time. So it's up to you how you wanted to take that. But I do understand the concept, and if it does exist, I think that's beautiful, but I've yet to see, I guess, scientific proof on that. So I'm going to continue on just because I don't want to run out of time. And
You're fine. There's no more questions.
okay, we're good. Okay. All right. So let's go into these channels here, these compromise and dominance. And so, and this is going to also, it doesn't have to be just between male and female. This could be female, female, male, male, non-binary. These are just the only doodles that I could find to example this. Okay. So just to keep that in mind. So if you have a compromise, it's going to be that one person has a full channel and the other only has half of it. So for example, they have two compromise channels between Meghan and Harry. Meghan is the one that carries, because you can see the coloring here where it's orange versus blue. So Harry's blue and Meghan's orange. This means that Meghan carries the full channel and Harry only has one of the full channel. So for the beat, she has 214, Harry has 14, but he's missing gate 2. And then for curiosity, she has 1156, he's missing gate 56. Compromise is going to be where difficulties are going to come in the relationship. This is going to be where this causes most of the reasons for arguments and the challenges and the difficulties in a relationship. Because when somebody has the full channel and someone's missing it, that other person that's missing it has to compromise with the other person. The person that has the full channel is always going to be the more, like, let's say there's an argument, right? So like, for example, with the 214, gate 2 is a state of higher knowing. It has to do with, you know, being your authentic self and your direction and your drive in life and where you're the path that you're supposed to be on. Because Harry's missing gate 2, he's going to compromise on his path for Meghan. Like, he's going to push towards her path more than he will go on his own because he's lacking that gate 2, and hers is going to influence that because she has the full channel, which you can already see has happened. I mean, they left the royal family. They went back to the US, I think, right? Or maybe Canada. I don't remember where they moved to, but wherever they are, he took her direction more. I mean, if it was the opposite, then she would have stayed with the royal family. As for 1156, 56 is this storytelling stimulation, and this has a lot to do with beliefs. So he probably compromises his beliefs for hers because she's going to influence that. She's going to be the one that holds that power in a way. So if the people are not in alignment with their energy, this will cause the relationship to break. This is going to be like, if they're not secure within themselves, it's going to break the relationship. And this is where all the problems will result to. If a person's in alignment with their energy, this is an energy that can be maintained. And it's going to be where it's like, it can be fine. It can work well in the relationship as long as you are in alignment with the energy. I hope that makes sense. Now, dominance channel is somebody that has a full channel, but the other person doesn't. So the dynamics for this is that Harry is the one that has all the dominant channels here, and Meghan has no dominance channels. So he has 1057, 35, 36, and 659, and she has nothing on that side for those. She doesn't have any of the gates, nothing. So this dominance is where you're going to really know your partner. So if, like, the fact that because it's consistency, Now, what you don't have, so whatever channels your partner has, you're going to take those channels and you're going to feel that energy and you're going to feel it times 2. So this is where you're going to get to really know your partner, because not only are you able to experience their energy, but you're going to feel it times 2. And that energy is always going to be consistent. So it's going to be something that you know about your partner. This is something that's consistent with them. And like, so for example, transitoriousness, okay? Transitoriousness is a pretty chaotic channel, in all honesty. So this might be a channel that's difficult for Megan to deal with because she's taking it on times 2, but this has to do with chaos. It has to do with somebody that experiences a lot of chaos or adventure. It can be in a positive way too, of course. And every experience they have, they're meant to share with the collective. So it's really somebody that goes through a lot of these experiences and chaos and a kind of a mess, right? So, I mean, I'm not super like celebrity follower person, but from what I understand, I mean, just look at all the chaos that's created because of their marriage, right? It's brought into this chaos, but it's something that she's learning to understand and identify with and know that this is part of the package. So that's where the dominance will come in. It's not meant to cause problems, but again, if the channel, just like everything has a light and a dark to it, right? So there's duality in human design. So if somebody is not in alignment with their energy, a negative point of this would be like transitoriousness. A negative aspect of this would be somebody that can't handle chaos. They allow chaos to rule their life and they become a fear of it. And so they get nervous about the energy. Their expectations are always let down and they're always disappointed. And so that's, if your partner is in a negative spot, then you're going to bring on that energy to yourself too. So this is why it's really important to know what your definition is and make sure that it's been correctly given, because if you're giving out negative energy, then that person's going to absorb it and they're going to feel it times 2. Hope that makes sense. Companionship channels. It's pretty rare, if you have companionship channels in your relationship, it's cool, doesn't make a difference. It's really rare to actually see a lot of companionship in a channel, in relationships. You'll see this more in friendships because this really has to do with it's literally like, this is where I was talking about, where it's like, it's like that you both have the same channel. And so you both have the same energy for that. And it's rare that you're going to look for that, because when you see it, you're not going to be really that attracted to it because you already have it. I don't need it. Wow. So it's not a bad thing if you have it in the relationship. It just means that you guys probably have this extra level of friendship in your relationship. I like to say that Max was my best friend at the time, but we didn't have any companionship channels either. But it does bring in this kind of extra friend level. Or it might be that it could also, if there's a lot of companionship channels over the other channels, it may make the relationship seem a little bit platonic more than this romantic sparking relationship. Now, electromagnetic channels. This is the last one, and I have the big fireworks because this is that energy that's going to cause that spark. This is the attraction energy that just sucks you into another person. So this is that twin flame energy, that wholeness energy, that's love at first sight, soulmate energy. All of these is going to have to do that. And as there's a thin line between love and hate, if you do not work out with a person, these channels are also going to make you repulse the person at the end. Like, this is what you're going to like. The first things that you loved about them is going to be what you hate about them at the end, because it's going to drive you nuts after a while. So as you can see, they have 3 electromagnetic channels, and those electromagnetic channels is what makes them feel whole. So this channel alone, like inspiration, is going to be a big deal for them. However, now there are 7 gates of love. And so if you have any of these, which I'm going to discuss in a second, any of these gates, which are these numbers here, or like if you see numbers here, right? Any of these gates in any of these positions, they are going to overrule. So in a way that if you have a love, these are not love gates, but they do have a love gate here. So they have a love gate in between their electromagnetic channel. So this is actually going to even override that 1-8 energy. Is going to be the most important one, is this one, because this is how they connect through the love. If you have no love gates in your connection with another person, there might be that spark that's lacking in the relationship. It may not feel doesn't mean that does not mean that there's no love in the relationship, of course, but it's going to feel like you're going to feel more connected to the person if that love, that's probably where more of the twin flame energy would come in through. Now, they're called mundane love. It's not mundane as in boring, but mundane as in earth love, because there are 4 other gates. There's actually 11 love gates total, but 4 of them are called transcendent love, meaning they're more about universal love, or this energy that doesn't really have to do with one-on-one love. It has to do more with like love of humanity and love of the body and love of, all all universal life. So those don't really have to do with connection. They call it mundane love because the mundane is on the earthly plane. This is the love that connects you through another person. Now, I can't go through every single gate because it would take a lot of time to do that, to explain how each of these work, but each of these gates have a theme connected to it, and you can see where they are in a graph. So like these are the loves, right? So, and I will discuss one of them because Megan and Harry have this. So gate 44, which is, like I said, this channel called surrender here, 2644. So 44 is a love gate. And 44 is what connects their love. And this is going to make that connection even stronger. So when it comes to gate 44, this is called the love of talent, successful love. It means that when they come together, their success is going to be based almost as in, well, first of all, let me put this back. Gate 44, so one thing that comes with it is that it's in the spleen. So this connects the spleen to the will, to your will center. So the spleen has to do with your health. And gate 44 will play a role into that. So this is somebody that if they're in correct alignment, this channel alone can create a very healthy relationship. If it's not in alignment, it will create a very unhealthy relationship. But 26 is the gate of the egoist. So this is somebody that's very really good at manipulating for good or bad. They're kind of the salesperson. The whole channel, like on a material plane, has to do with somebody that's really good at sales, really selling it, bringing in like how to improve things, to see things for better. So when they connect together, it's connecting this material aspect to the relationship as well. So that does have to do with money in the relationship. So if the relationship is like, if both parties, like let's say, don't like a lot of money and money is a huge issue into the relationship where it's going to cause a lot of problems, it will have to come through this channel. So the point is more so when you're in the not self, this is going to say, well, I love you because we're a success, or saying like, I can't be a success without you. And because of that, it's like, if it weren't for me, you know, if like one person has this and say, well, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't have anything. And look at the kind of life you're living because of me. You can't do it on your own. That's not self-talk. Okay. So that's saying like, that's the energy that's going to be where they're going to try to control the money, use money as a manipulation in the relationship, might try to have financial control in the relationship, or they're going to feel bitter depending on the person. Like if they're a projector, like that's the theme for projector is bitterness. So they may feel bitterness towards the other person and they don't think that person's bringing in money and helping the relationship be successful. Now in the true self, where the energy will be alignment, it's like, it's saying that we together are a success. Like we can't be a success without the other, in a way that you enter the relationship incorrectly and you see it, because it's about talent, successful love. It's like you bring out the talent in the other person when you kind of connect together, and it's its ability to bring the supportiveness into the home from outside work to be successful. And so it's saying it's because of you that I find success. You motivate me to find the success. My power is in you, and because of you pushing me to be the success, I am a success. And it's this beauty and this potential, and it's this shared experience of them succeeding together. They're very supportive of each other and really wanted to see the other person succeed. So, and if you think about it in a way too, I mean, even, and it comes in through with the talent. So, you know, Prince Harry, in a way, you know, she was an actress. And so he saw her talent, I'm assuming, you know, even though she's at something she had to let go of when they got together. But I don't know exactly what's going on in the relationship, but I'm assuming that, I think that she's like trying to get back into it, or she's being more outward now that they've left the royalness of this. But one thing you can notice too, and this is just the basics, okay? So it's going to play a role depending on where the gate sits. So for 44, for Prince Harry, this energy actually, he has it twice in his chart. So it's a bigger energy than her 26, because she only has 26 once, and this is a Neptune, but he has 44 twice, and it's in Mars and Saturn. So there's lessons for him to be learned in this gate alone. Now this also has to do with the fact that 44 is a fear, has a fear tied to it. So gate 44 is the fear of the past. So if you're with somebody through this channel, and let's say they have a lot of trauma from their childhood, they have not worked out. And they're like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to think about the past. And they're going to have a really hard time dealing with the future too. It's going to be kind of this like, where, because I'm not going to deal with my past, they're never going to really go into the future. They're going to have these issues that they're going to have to deal with, because it's going to be this fear that's going to control the relationship. So unless they visit the past, get over it and let it go, that's also going to cause some problems. So for Prince Harry, I would imagine that he has some, like, most likely, you know, his mother died at a young age. So I'm sure there's trauma that maybe he gets nervous about, doesn't want to revisit that past. But since where they sit, this is an energy that's he's going to grow into it as he gets older, which I'm guessing, I know that throughout his life. I think he's changed a lot. I don't know him personally, who knows? But one other thing too, is that they're both going through their Uranus oppositions right now, which is a whole nother subject. So they're both going through a lot of changes right now, and they're dealing with this stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out. Okay, so before I stop, get into the profile node lines, any other questions in between there? I see there's a lot of dots in there. So is there any other questions that permanent?
No, there was more conversation. Lynn made a comment about identical twins are different because even though the bodies look alike, the souls are different. And Maxine commented, good point. Misha says, I'm an emotional projector. If I have to wait to be invited or recognized by the other interested person, how can I let them know I'm interested?
Well, you wouldn't know if you're interested until they invite you or recognize you. You're not going to really truly know, because you're not entering the religion. Like, it's not going to be something that's going to be, you might think that, oh, there might be this electromagnetic connection that you have towards them, or like, oh, there's something about them that attracts you to them. But unless they invite you or recognize you, you're not going to really truly know if that person's right for you. And you also have to wait for emotional clarity, which again, I'm going to get into the authorities later. So that's something just to keep in mind. It's not entering the relationship correctly.
And then past that, the conversation kind of got into reincarnation and
Okay, guys, I'm going to ask you to keep like off-topic conversations kind of like off the chat, because that's the reason why I had chat closed, just because it gets distracting for other people. So if you could just, for now, just keep track. Like if you guys want to have a conversation on your own, get the other person's email, talk to them later. Just during this time, I just ask that we focus on what's going on here. Okay. So as for profile and node lines, I'm going to say these don't make a huge impact, but I'm going to mention them because they talk about them. I think personally, it does have to do with this has to do with more of this energy in a way where I'm going to actually make this one comment about the soul that Lynn had made a comment of. In regards to identical twins, the soul is definitely going to be affected by, am I frozen? Am I good? I just froze. Everybody.
No, you're good. You're
okay.
good.
So one thing I want to mention, that your soul is definitely going to be affected by your nature, and your nature, like I said, I do believe that there is a tie to our DNA into our soul, and that has to do a lot with epigenetics and SNPs, like I was mentioning. So no matter what, your soul is going to be affected by the nature of what you're born into and what you're dealing with. Your soul, and even in human design, your soul does come through on the personality side. Your soul is incarnated every single time. So it does play a role into that. So it kind of depends on how you feel about science, but I mean, I do believe that our soul is in our DNA, but that's just my personal opinion. Okay, so profile node lines. Your profile is your archetype, it's your personality. Kind of like this is the role that you play. So they say that if somebody doesn't have the same role as you or have this harmony with it, so you can see that Megan's a 5-1 and he's a 1-3. First of all, this is because Megan's a left angle and he's a right angle. So again, we always attract to what we don't have. So it's very normal for left angles to be attracted to right angles. However, there are more right angles than left. So statistically, it's almost impossible for every single person to connect with an opposite, but it's just that you'll tend to look for this. And this is because somebody that's a left angle is called transpersonal karma, meaning that it has to do more with your karmatic past, your incarnation. Like if you're a left angle, it means like every single person that comes into your life has to do with some karmic connection, some past life connection, and it has a role to play in this life. And every person that you meet, you will change them. If you're a right angle, this has to do with personal destiny. So personal destiny is more about your own path. You are not meant to take what other people do off your path. You have a path here, you have a purpose here, and you're supposed to just go for it. The past lives are not supposed to play a big role into this. Unless you have, trauma from them, absolutely can play a role. Yeah, but it's supposed to be like you come in when you're a right angle, you actually come into this life with a veil over your past life carnations. You're not supposed to like let them come in, because it's really about what you came here to do in this purpose. I'm a 3-6 though, and I'll tell you right now, my past lives do play a role into this, but probably because I've had a lot of lives and they've been a little bit traumatic each time. But so now when it comes to the numbers, you can see here where I say there's harmony. There are certain lines that are harmony, because it goes 1 through 3. It's called the lower triagram, and then 4, 5, 6 is the higher triagram. So these lines are harmony connected. So the line 1, this is the foundation line of the lower triangle. Line 4 is the foundation line of the higher triangle. 2 and 5, and then 3 and 6. So each of these kind of go like, if you were to think about it as a house, right? Like 1, 2, 3, you know, they're on the first floor, 4, 5, 6. Well, 6 is actually on the roof, but each of them kind of go through this transition. And so that's how they become harmonic. So as long as like, if one person has the same line, like, right, they both share a line 1. So there's this resonance. They have this similarity together, this connection together because of that line 1. This is investigating energy. They both like to search for knowledge. They both like to know what's going on, and they like to get all the facts, and they like to feel secure in their foundation before they go forward. So this is something where they'll have this commonality, and it will help resonate with both of them. If they don't, but if he had a 4, like let's say he was a 2, 4, they would still be this harmony because she's got a 1. So either 2 or 1. 2, 4 will be harmonic with 5, 1 because I hope that makes sense. Now your node lines, this is actually discussed in, it's not discussed so much in the connection books or with human design. This actually is connected more with cosmology of human design, but your nodes are right here on your chart. You're going to see them, and it's going to be these. Now, what has to do with this, they do share, they say that it's better to at least have one. If you get both, amazing. If you don't, that's fine. If you have at least one, you're going to connect better with that person. This has to do because your nodes have to do with the direction in your life and the direction that you play in your life. And also it has to do with your social environment. So in your, if you have different lines, it means like you guys won't most likely have the same kind of friends, they say. So it's kind of where, as long as you both can have, if you have the same line, then you will have the better group of social connection with another person, if that makes sense. So like you most likely will be able to hang out in a group and not be so separate from each other. Like I said, I don't think these play some role, but I don't think they're the most important, but they do talk about it. So I wanted to mention it. Okay, lastly, well, this part. So as for the bottom part here, we're talking about connection themes. Now you can see that they have called 7-2 work to do, right? So these are your connection themes. This has to do with how many centers are defined when you two come together. So you can see here, like Megan has 4 centers defined, and she has 5 centers undefined. Same with him. He has 4 centers defined. No, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 centers defined 4. But when they come together, there's 2 that are undefined, and then there's the 7 that are defined. So that gives them 7 and 2 work to do. So what does that mean? All right. So these are all of them. There is a 5 and 4, but I didn't mention that one because I don't know if it was part of the older human design. They don't really talk about it as much anymore, but 5 and 4, it basically says like not a relationship anymore. Like this, it doesn't really work because again, you're always looking for your opposite. So eventually the relationship will there won't be this fizzle or spark to it. So if you have 9 and 0, nowhere to go. This has to be with all centers are defined. So when these is a couple that like the power couple in a way where like they don't even need anybody else in their relationship. They're okay with just hanging out with themselves half the time. And it's because all the centers are defined. It makes them this whole person where they're just like, yeah, we don't really need anybody. It's fine. And or, you know, when you have a friend, let's say you have a friend that tends to get into a relationship and every single time maybe they forget about their friends. They go fully into the relationship. And it could be because if it's a 9 and 0, then maybe because they feel like, oh, I don't need my friends anymore. Or, and this works on a friendship level too, of course, that if you have a friend, if you're connecting to somebody with a friend and 9 and 0, maybe like just like hanging out with that person, but you don't like hanging out with them in a group dynamic because you don't need anybody else there. You know, it's that when your energy gets together, you're like this defined full person. So it's like, I don't really need anybody. This could be good and bad in a way for a relationship aspect of it, because as a 9 and 0, you're obviously going to feel super comfortable in the relationship. You're going to feel really centered and good. And like, yeah, this is meant to be, again, twin flame kind of energy. However, if the energy is like, again, one person's not self or conditioned or in a bad situation, or they have shit to figure out, you're going to have a really hard time breaking from this relationship. So you'll tend to be in the relationship longer. So this can cause some unhealthiness in the relationship, or you might become codependent on the person. And if you're not within your own self, and so you just feel like this person, if I'm not with this person 24/7, then I might feel lost or broken in a way. So this can have some benefiting energy, and it can also have some negative energy. It's really that like some people are meant to be in relationships like this and some people aren't. So you don't have to say it's not necessarily the best one, because in a way it can be a negative impact again if it's not in this connection together. Now 8 and 1 have some fun. This is 1 center is undefined and 8 are defined. This is considered the best type of connection, because this is where you guys have this one center that's undefined, and then where you're undefined or where the centers are open is kind of learning lessons in life. Or you like, if you were to take schooling subjects in school, like these are the subjects you would sign up for. So it's this opportunity for you guys to explore things together. So in a way, like, let's say if it's, you know, if they're both of them have their head open, right? Like the head center is open for both of them. This will be where they can explore these ideas and inspirations and the mysteries of the world and talk about the occult or the unknown and have these deep conversations, you know. Or if it's like the throat energy, maybe the throat's open. This is how they're going to learn how to like really explore their own voice. Maybe they'll take a foreign language together and things like that. So this is where that have some fun is like to explore that area. Now, it depends on the centers, which I'm going to discuss in a moment here. If centers are also where we can become most conditioned, like I said, there's going to be certain centers that are going to really impact the relationship. So for example, my ex and I, we did have 8 and 1, but it was our emotional center that was undefined. So in a way, this was good because emotional and unemotional people coming together, that can cause a lot of issues as well. But when it's but if the person is not, I don't know why, am I frozen again? Sorry, my screen keeps freezing. I'm not sure why. Am I good? Everybody good? Okay.
Yeah.
So in this way, it's going to be that if like he was not in touch with his emotions, he has very difficulties with his emotions. So this actually caused a big problem for us to have that one center that was a learning lesson. When you have somebody that's more of an emotional, intelligent person versus somebody that's not, it's going to cause that conflict too. So 8 and 1 can also cause conflict, even though they consider it the best. It really does come down to the type of person. Now, 7 and 2 is called work to do. Now, this is because there's going to be more challenges in a relationship. The more centers you have open is when the challenges come in. And so, like I said, Megan and Harry have 7 and 2, right? And this is because they have, which for them, it's interesting because they have their head and their root undefined. So these centers are actually the only 2 pressure centers. To have both of these undefined is going to mean that all of this pressure that they are like conditioned to and around them, the pressure for them to be together, the pressure of them to have these like beliefs and these what they're supposed to do and who they're supposed to be, that's going to come into this role. And so as long as they're both really centered in themselves, this is not going to be a problem. It's actually going to be, and this is where this difference is going to come in too, because it's more about like when you have 2 centers opens, that means that they're going to have these different interests as well too. So there's ultimately, this could split people very easily if those interests are separate and they're not able to handle that. It means that this relationship is going to be a little bit more independent, and they absolutely both have very separate interests. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but in a way where they learn to manage it together. But if you are in a relationship that doesn't manage it, and it also depends on the center as well that are left open. But if it's those centers are open and they're not in the not self, this is where it's going to cause conflict, because it's going to separate the relationship. They're going to say, oh, I want to go do this. Well, I want to do this. So then fine, we'll do it separately and you go do this. And that's where it's going to cause the separation. But if you're very strong, it's going to bring a little bit more of independence to a relationship versus someone that's a 9 or 0 and or 8 and 1, right? So there's going to be this separation. But some people are meant like relationships like that. That's better for them. Like a triple split, 7 and 2 would probably be a really good relationship for them. So again, it just depends on, there's dynamics kind of come together. It's a formula in a way, right? And then the last one is called 6 and 3, better to be free. And now I'm going to make this very clear. If you have 6 and 3, does not mean that you're not meant to be together. It just means that, again, there is going to be more challenges in the relationship. If that, I know a couple that's in the 6-3, and they have had a lot of challenges. They have broken up, but they've gotten back together. And each time they've gotten back together, it's because when they've broken up, they've become more independently grown. They've learned what their issues are and they've worked through them. And then they come together, and then that's where the relationship starts to work. Again, it just means that it brings a little bit more independence into the relationship, and that this person, there just has to be space in the relationship. You can't smother each other. There has to be respect for the other person to be able to do their own thing and to work this out. So again, some people are better in relationships like this. A quad split definitely would be better in a 6-3. But again, it's going to come down to if a person's in alignment or not. Okay, so any questions on that? Simple information.
Not any questions on that. Ryan had a comment. I agree that there could be a connection between the soul and DNA. I've never heard it explained in this way before. All souls playing life in this genetic matrix, we're energizing together. I'd like to hear you speak again. Agreed. Lynn asks, are there a lot of famous 5-1s?
It's a more common profile. 5-1s actually, it's interesting because it just, not to go off topic here, but 5-1s are the most transpersonal out of all the profiles. Meaning if you have somebody that's a 5-1, they have a lot of karmic energy they're due in this life. Like every single person that they meet has definitely some type of past life. Anybody with a line 5 together, but a 5-1 especially. Sophia, I know you're a line 5-1, but that means every single person that comes into their life has some kind of karmic connection. They have the most karmic energy to resolve per se. So it's kind of like, and it's also would be considered somebody that's more of a younger soul. And what I mean by that is, because there's a lot of debates about an old soul versus a young soul is, it doesn't mean that they haven't had a lot of past lives. It may be that they've had a lot of lives on different planets, but it has to do with your soul level on Earth in a way. So it might be that there's some lessons in life that you have not, like whatever you've come to this planet to do, whether you believe in interstellars or not, but it's more about like, you haven't learned the lesson you're supposed to be learning. And so you keep coming back and repeating the same life over and over again. So every time you do that, the karma kind of builds up. And so it's not allowing your soul to grow on this earthly plane. And so it will continue that way until you learn the lesson. Take that with a grain of salt, Sophia. Okay, so talking about the centers. So let's say you find yourself in a lot of unhealthy relationships or these repeated patterns. Now, all the centers obviously play a role. And this is, as I was mentioning, single versus split, whatever, it says, okay, split is supposed to be more about the gates. I'm going to talk about this in a way where definition does not play a role into this. Okay, this is just the centers altogether. And it will make a difference if the centers are white, if these 4 centers that I'm going to be discussing, they are white, they're going to be conditioned a lot. These are going to be areas that are going to be a problem for you. If they're colored in and they're conditioned, it's because of what happened in childhood and you haven't worked it out yet. So first one, I'm going to talk about the identity center. Your identity center is your center of love and direction. This is if you feel lovable, how you view love. So again, if it's colored in, how your parents treated you, how your parents showed you love, how the people that you surrounded yourself loved each other. If you were growing up in a toxic, abusive family, that's going to influence how you feel about love. Now, if you feel you're lovable, because it's also the center for self-love, all that. So how you view love overall is going to be extremely impacted by your childhood. So if you have energy, like basically trauma or, a lot of stagnant energy from your childhood that you have not really faced, and that's going to be up to you to decide if that's something that's true or not. But if you look at the pattern of your relationship, and this is a center that's defined for you, and you keep saying, well, I just don't think they loved me the right way, or I don't think I was very lovable. Okay, well then if those are words that you're saying, then there's something conditioned in childhood that you need to work on. There's a shadow there that you have not dealt with. If it's white, you're going to have asking yourself a lot, what is love? Was this love? Did I really fall in love? How do I feel about love? And where you find yourself in a way, because you're not going to know who you really are. People that have an undefined identity center are not supposed to know their love and direction in life. I have an undefined identity center and it's freaking hard, guys. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, oh, it was really eye-opening for me because like, even as a child, I wrote a book when I was 10 years old called What is Love? Because literally I had no idea what it even means. And I still don't know if I do, but I've done a lot of research into like the scientific view of love and philosophy and all this, because I'm really understanding like, because to me, it's kind of like, how do you define love? I don't know. It's like hard for me to even say that, but when you're in a relationship, so if you're with somebody that has a defined identity and you have an undefined identity, this is where this is going to cause this kind of like, you might fall into their identity. You will conform to them and you will follow their path and you will have a hard time breaking into your own. And it will cause problems because you are not meant to fall into somebody else's path. You're meant to learn in a way where this identity, if you have an undefined identity, it's really about learning that what love is in your own way, but not falling into somebody else's identity. You still have to keep yourself separate from that identity. And I've done a lot of readings for people, and even people that I've discussed that have open or undefined identity centers tend to say, yeah, I tend to fall into the person and I'll conform to them. Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's not healthy and that's not how it's supposed to work. Spleen, this is your immune system. This is a huge primal fear center, okay? So you have to think about it in a way that if you have a defined spleen, then again, this is going to be conditioned in childhood. Were you put in danger as a lot? This is your, what do you call it? flight or fight response center, right? So this is your danger spot. This is what is unhealthy for you, what is healthy for you. So if you witnessed, let's say your parents or like one of the parents staying in an unhealthy situation, and you watch that as a child and you have a defined spleen, again, you're going to think that's what's healthy for you, even though it's not. If it's undefined, if you meet somebody with a spleen that's defined and then you have an undefined spleen, immediately you're going to feel safe with this person. This person's going to give you a sense of security. And I, again, understand this energy so freaking well because I have an undefined spleen. But it is like that person will, like, you'll think that person could never hurt me. That person just, nope, they make you feel safe. You feel secure when they even like hold you. And then like, you're like, there's just no way this person would ever hurt me. Even though they're consistently hurting you over and over again, you're convincing yourself like, no, they're not like this. This is good. And you'll hold on to what isn't good. You're going to hold on to that relationship because you're going to think that's what's right for you, even though it's not. So be very conscious that if you have an undefined spleen and you're with someone that has a defined spleen, make sure that it's right for you. Will center, huge, huge, huge part of why people fall into bad relationships. This is your will center. This is what your worth is. Now there's a difference between am I lovable or am I worthy? So this is where, this is not questioning whether or not am I lovable. This is questioning, am I worthy for love? Am I worth the love? Am I feeling validated? So if you have a defined will center, and again, if you were brought up in a home that someone made, your parents or your peers made you feel like you were worthless or you weren't good enough, you're going to be consistently trying to find proof that you are good enough. This is where like this is where your heart and your ego sits too. So people that have narcissistic or sociopathic issues are also going to be in this center. Now, if you have it undefined, if you are with somebody that has a defined will, first of all, you're going to become a workaholic. I'll tell you that right now, because you're going to have all this motivation. You're like, wow, yeah, I feel like I could do anything. Trust me. Again, I have an undefined will, and I have found the pattern of my relationships that I've always met somebody that has a defined will, and then I become like this workaholic, and I'm like, then it causes problem in the relationship, and I'm like, I don't know, just now I know why. But this is why. But also, again, if you have an undefined will and you're dating a narcissist or a sociopath, you're going to feel like basically like shit about yourself, because the true nature of a narcissist or a sociopath, is that they feel complete unworthiness. Like that's what the psychological, I mean, they see like, oh, they're self grandiose and they think they're super cool or think they're, the bee's knees or whatever you want to say, but that's not really truly what it is. It's underneath the surface is that they have all this like energy where they just don't feel like they're good enough and they feel like they're unworthy. Most likely they hate themselves. So you are going to take that on and you're going to feel it times 2, and you're going to think that it's you, and it's not you. So I really, really make sure that if you're with somebody, but if you feel like you're sacrificing all this stuff in the relationship, you're sacrificing your needs, or maybe they broke up with you and you're so desperate to get them back because you're looking for validation that you're worth it to them, it's coming out of the will center. And that means it's been conditioned, and that's not how it's supposed to be. Because if you have an undefined will center, just know that you are worthy and that you don't have to prove it to anybody, and they should respect that. I say that. I should take my own advice. Trust me. Now, last is emotional solar plexus. So again, if you are an unemotional person, like meaning that you don't have your center defined and you're with somebody that has an emotional center, you're going to feel their emotions times 2. And this is going to cause issues in the relationship sometimes. If it's not saying that you are only supposed, like emotional people are supposed to be with emotional people and undefined, like unemotional are supposed to be with unemotional people. It doesn't really work that way. But I'm just saying that, like, depending on it, like if it's undefined and somebody hasn't really becoming that emotional intelligence, this is somebody that's probably going to lie a lot. They're going to avoid confrontation. They're going to fear it so much that they're just going to like not tell you the truth half the time just because they're like so afraid of it. Or when they do like have the opportunity to be truthful, they'll probably lie because they don't want to deal with the confrontation or the fight behind it. Or if it's defined, again, what it's defined is going to have to do with your tribal wave or a collective wave or an individual wave. So there's these mechanics that come into your emotions. Like, I'm not going to like, I can't go on a tangent like that right now, but in a way, you're going to, so whatever the person, if they're unemotional, they're going to feel that wave and they're going to have to deal with it times 2. So when your emotions get heightened, it's like your partner's going to feel it times 2. And then this is where the conflict can come in. That can cause a lot of fights and arguments. So just to keep those in mind. Lastly, I'm going to discuss is authority. So how do you know if you're in the correct relationship, right? So like I said, you entered it into this strategy, right? You waited for a response, or you waited, you made somebody informed. Okay, so I'm there, like, how do I know now? Well, this is your authority, your inner authority, depending on what it is. Now, in a chart, if you have a genetic matrix, it will tell you like if you're an emotional manifester, emotional projector, emotional generator, whatever. That means that and this is the hierarchy, how this is listed is the hierarchy of your authority, meaning like if you have your emotional center defined, you're an emotional, that's your authority. If you don't have your emotional center defined, but you have your sacral defined, then you are a generator. If you don't have either of these two and you have your splenic defined, then you're a splenic, either projector or manifester. So it goes in this order too, if that makes sense. So 53% of the population are emotional authority. And this means that you have to wait for emotional clarity. Every single person I say, if you have an emotional center defined, get a mood tracker. I'm gonna just tell you that, and I will harass people about it when I know they have an emotional center defined. I'll ask them, have you been tracking your moods? Have you been doing that? Because as a way, so it's really hard to understand what emotional clarity is unless you really start to learn your energy. Depending on the type of channel that you have that connects to your emotional center will determine the type of emotional person you are. You can be tribal, which means that your emotional pattern is super predictable and you have this kind of ticking time bomb energy where it's like tick, 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 you push things under the rug and all of a sudden you explode and then you reset. And at that reset is when you have emotional clarity. If you have individual wave, that means that your emotions can kind of go all over the place. It's really your moods have a lot to do with it, and your highs and your lows don't last as long, and they could be very sporadic and they could be kind of unpredictable. But it's when you're going to be at this kind of like meh, whatever energy is when you have that emotional clarity. Now, if you have a collective, this is somebody that has expectations, and your emotions are going to be based on your expectations. And when your expectations are let down, your whole world comes crashing down, and you can stay in these lows for a very long time. So again, when you have that crash is when you're going to reset. You'll see it if you get a mood tracker, you can start tracking your patterns and you will see a pattern develop into your centers. If it's individual, it's going to be a little bit harder to track the pattern, but you still can see how the emotions work. So it's almost like I don't know, like a Richter scale. Is that a thing that's word? Like, what's that thing that, whatever. Anyways, so you're going to see a pattern. And when you kind of have this flat line is when you're going to have that kind of emotional clarity. Now, when you are entering into a relationship, so you're not going to really, if you have an emotional center, if you're dating someone that doesn't have an emotional center, you're going to think that person likes you way more at first. And they're probably, well, if you like that person, then they're going to like you too, really a lot, because they're picking up on your emotions. But that's why they say you should wait for emotional clarity, because you might feel differently about them next time you go out with them, because your emotions maybe are at a different level. So they say you should go on at least 3 dates until you define, depend on how you find. And also, if you have an emotional authority, you should almost play a little hard to get. You are supposed to patiently go into a relationship. You are not supposed to be this one that's like, bam, I like this person, let's love at first sight, let's get married in 2 weeks. That kind of energy, that will never work out. I'm telling you right now, it will not work out, because you must enter into the relationship with patience and grace. And they say even with emotional authority, it's almost better to play hard to get, because that way you have this kind of patience that goes into it, and then you can kind of ride it out. And also too, I will mention, like when you're like Misha, when you're saying about how I'm an emotional projector, how am I supposed to know if I'm interested? If somebody is meant for you, your aura will draw them in. Meaning if that person is right for you, they will recognize you, they will invite you if it's meant to be. And your emotional authority will help guide you to see if that's right. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you're a sacral energy, this is only generators and manifesting generators are sacral energy, but you can be an emotional manifesting generator or an emotional generator. That means that your sacral is not your authority. You still have to wait for emotional clarity. But if you're a pure generator or a pure manifesting generator, that means that your sacral is your authority. And this is going to be that responding in the moment. Your gut will tell you right away, like, whew, yeah, this person's right for me, or ooh, I feel a little off about this person. Or if they ask you, you should try to let your sacral speak through you, which is going to be like, or It's like this, the sacral actually has this voice. And there's something called sacral sessions too, where you can practice with that. But if you're in a relationship and you're a sacral being and you're not listening to your sacral, don't worry, it's going to tell you that your relationship is not right for you, because it's going to annoy the shit out of you. You're just going to have this pit feeling in your stomach, like something's off, and eventually it will manifest into health issues, like severe health issues. You might start to get like almost like I can't even explain it. I'm a pure generator, and I knew that my relationship was not good for me, but I held on to it a lot tighter. Like I said, undefined spleen, undefined will center. I can admit it, but I eventually got super sick towards the end. I mean, sick. Like I thought I had MS. Like I was joints were hurting. I was sick all the time, nauseous, headaches, anything you can imagine. Like my body was just, and the moment that I've learned where the energy was coming from, then I all of a sudden miraculously felt a lot better. So trust me, your energy will tell you, your sacral will warn you. If you're a splenic, this is something that's led by intuitive hits. Like you're just going to know in the moment if this person's right. Like it's going to feel, you're going to feel a sensation in your body. And I can't tell you exactly how it feels like, because I don't have a defined spleen, but it's your intuition that's going to lead you, but it's going to only tell you once and not again. So if this person's not right for you, you're going to know immediately, and you should pay attention to that, because it will not change. It's not going to change. It's always about, because it's about the truth of the now and how your body, and it could be like, I've heard it where it's like literally people's bodies hurt when their intuition is coming through, or it can be just like almost an electric spark, or just like a pinch or something. So it's really going to be in the moment, that moment. Like it's not going to predict in the future. It's not going to tell you this person's going to be great in 5 years from now. It's only in the moment. So if there's a moment in your relationship where you also feel like if you have a splenic authority, it will tell you throughout the relationship if something's off, and that you're going to know it. If you have an ego, which is either going to be a manifester or a projector, manifestors must talk it out loud. That means they're going to have to talk to their friends or people that they trust and say, is this relationship right for me? I don't know if I like this person, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's not supposed to be that you're supposed to talk it out as in like they're supposed to give you advice back. They're just sounding boards. They're just talking. You're just talking out and listening to your voice, because your voice is going to tell you the truth. Your voice will tell you, you'll know it and you'll hear it in your own voice, but you have to say it out loud. If you are a projector, that means you have to ask yourself, is this right for me? Is this person going to fulfill my needs? Do I like this person? How does this person, it's supposed to be super selfish questions you're supposed to ask yourself about the other person or about the relationship. One thing to keep in mind though, if you are an ego driven, like an ego authority, what commitments that you make to somebody and the promises that you make for them, it's so important for you to follow through on them, because that is part of your energy. You are designed to do that. And if you don't, that means you're not in the not self. You're not using your energy correctly. So be careful on how you do it. Now, for self-projected, this is only for projectors. Again, this is somebody that has to talk it out loud, because this is going to come through your voice. It's going to come through your identity. This is your true self saying, your higher self talking, but you're only going to know it when you say it out loud to other people, but your voice will say it. So again, you have to listen to your voice. If you're environmental, that means you're a mental projector is what they're called. Very little, only 2% of the population. But this is somebody that has to talk it out loud, but they have to talk it out to more than one person. It's not just talking to one person about it. It's like you have to have this board of advisors, and you listen to the story, you tell these people over and over again, and that's where the truth will come out in it. If you're a reflector, again, you're supposed to wait for that 28-day cycle. And also be careful of who you surround yourself with. If people are trying to give you advice or tell you what to do not listen to them. This is up to you. You have to learn the moon cycles, learn how it's supposed to be. And then at that end of that cycle, how do you feel about it? But if you're in a bad environment or the environment's not right, your authority isn't going to be correct either. So your environment does make a huge impact on that. Now, finishing this up. But you guys, no matter what, the most important love there is self-love. So no matter what, if you are in a relationship, and I'm not even talking about human design, I'm talking psychology, soul-wise, everything. We all know that if you do not love yourself, you're not capable of loving another person. So make sure that you get to know yourself first. And I'm frozen. Okay. Make sure you get to know yourself first and love yourself first, because only then will you be able to love somebody else. And that's really the big concept about human design too, because in human design, not to go into the whole cosmology behind it, but it is literally that we are all beings broken off on this crystal of love. And so we have love inside of us, and we can only give out that love when we love ourselves first and really appreciate who we are. And I know that's not easy. So, but that's where human design comes into play, because you learn to appreciate yourself. So I'm going to end this and then, okay, you guys. So, is there anything? Yeah. Is there anything you can say about municipality and really know they are the right person for you, but the time is up, like maybe they weren't? That's a good question, Emily. So her question was, I guess you guys can read just chat, is that if you meet somebody and you know that person's right, but the timing is off. Timing does play a big role into human design. It really kind of depends on, I guess, what type of person what your type is, what type you are, because I'll tell you right now, projectors are all about timing. Timing is a huge thing. So you might meet somebody and I'll tell you right now, if the timing's not right, or if you have an emotional authority, if the timing's not right, don't worry about it because they will come back around. That's how you know if the time's not right, is that person right? You know, so I would say if the time is not right, they will come back into your life and just have faith in that and trust in that. Yeah, I know it's a lot to digest. So can type generators, what type of wave you have? Okay, I'll tell you this way. If you have, so if you have 35, you have to look at your channels. If you have 35 and 36, channel 35, 36, transitoriousness, right? That one, or if you have, 1 second, let me think, 30, 40, 41, so recognition. If you have recognition or transitoriousness, that means you have a collective wave. If you have 1949 or 3740, that means you have a tribal wave. If you have 1222 or 3955, that means you have an individual wave. If you have more than one channel, that means you have more than one wave, and Lord bless you. If you have 59.6, which is a channel of mating, this is a different wave. It's called a source wave, and that is the source of all emotions. That's all I can say. I'm laughing because it's like, yeah, I know it's a lot to take in, but it's this wave will only come out when it affects another person. So it means that you're going to act differently when there's making and breaking of bonds. So you might act differently, like your emotions might feel different when someone's breaking up with you. You might feel different when you get into a relationship, or even with friendships, or like breaking relationships is going to be harder. You're going to react differently emotionally.